Hello, hello, happy holidays. I am recording this at nighttime on the 23rd, but I'm going to release it on the 25th. And I'm going to give myself a little bit of space for rest in between having had this recorded. And then I'm going to see if I can even schedule tomorrow's and the next days. So the 24th and the 25th tonight. So I can just rest, spend time with my mom and keep it quiet over the weekend. We are on our final day of our little mini series within our embodiment series of Daily December. And we have been working on life visioning, which I have found so nourishing. I may at some point also create either another playlist to be for the mini series for those of you who are interested in just watching these connection points but I also might re-upload them with different titles to clarify that they're a mini series. So if you're subscribed and you get notifications and you're like, I think I've seen this already, you'll know why. We'll see. I'm still thinking through that for organization purposes, but just a little insight into how my brain is working right now. We have been exploring so very much. We started with clarifying a little bit about the visioning process and how we can approach it and the essential components of visioning, regardless of the process that we use. And there's a couple of practices that we have walked through and we'll walk through again together in a way that are part of the process. But regardless of what processes you use, any of the ones from these practices or others that you've learned from elsewhere, there is clarity. And I love this clarity. It's so simple. It's using the rule of three. Humans are really good with cycles of three, sometimes five. And that really follows a beginning, a middle, and an end, or just the amount of information. Most minds are able to track those things and not feel overwhelmed. We can hold the 5-part experience too, but usually after we've done the 3-part experience for a while, that tends to be easier to add in. So if you're someone who gets overwhelmed really easy, you can see if you can find a way to divide things into just 3 basic frameworks or categories. That can be helpful. And that's one thing that's provided right here. We are back into the book, The Drummer and the Great Mountain, a guidebook to transforming adult ADD, ADHD by Michael Joseph Ferguson. And I'll leave the links to this book and Michael Joseph Ferguson's work down below. What he mentions is that visioning should accomplish the following 3 things, always, regardless of the process you use. Provide clarity about what you want to create, clarify what you don't want to create, and create a basic roadmap to work from. Yeah, I'm repeating this in every single video in this mini series because I think it's such a beautiful core foundational concept. And for those of you who are dancers and you take ballet for your foundational technique to really understand how you can stand on your leg or the basic fundamental components of how you're utilizing your body. I have retooled a lot of my cues in ballet to be different than the ones or modified compared to a lot of the way I was trained, not all of the way I was trained, but there are some subtleties that I've specifically chosen to be a little more body friendly, at least friendly for my body. What is often spoken of if you train in ballet as a performing artist is that if you are really working your technique, if you are really interested in the nuances, you can take a beginning class at any level and find a lot of value in it. That it's not about the speed you're going at, it's actually the slowing down and the really articulating the details of foundations that's the groundwork for the rest, for the dancing, for the build, right? We have to have a solid core, solid foundation in order to feel like we can really fly into the dance later on. This visioning process is a beautiful way to sort of break down things and come back to this clarity of what the visioning process should include so that you have a clear foundation, so that as you utilize different processes to help you step into action, that if you get a little lost, you can come back and go, is this providing clarity on what you want, what you don't want, and providing a basic roadmap to work from? Those are our 3 things, our foundation for the visioning process. Okay. So after that, visioning step 1, where we got clear about our talents and skill sets and did a practice called talents and abilities. And then we did another practice, envisioning step 2, as is laid out in this book, mining your daydreaming for clues, which we titled Exploring Your Subconscious. And then we did visioning step 3, all about long-term goals in specific areas of your life, and those areas that we explored, and there are others that you could integrate: health and body, work, relationships, creative expression, finances, service, spirituality, home, travel, adventure, and possessions. And I didn't do this here, but when I used to teach self-care classes at a college for some college courses, what I like to provide was, I don't remember what it's called now, but maybe you've seen it, like a circle, like a wheel of different quadrants that are broken up into different aspects of your life. So you could do a practice like that where you draw a circle and then you divide a pie into those 10 different quadrants I just listed, and then you label them. And then you can also take a look and ask yourself, like, if the center is not doing well at all and the outside is totally full and enriched, you can also map, where do I feel satisfied versus unsatisfied? And then you can connect the dots and see what kind of shape you make, and or how balanced or imbalanced or really depleted that you might be. And this isn't to judge ourselves. It's not to hurt ourselves with the awareness of that, but it is to be able to take a snapshot of a moment in time, hopefully allow us to either appreciate where we're at, or to be with like the hard parts of where we might be at, or to have an awareness of maybe we're over focusing in one area and there's another area that we've been really neglecting. And it gives us a little bit more agency when we can take stock and notice. But the way we take stock and notice is also so important, which is what a lot of self-care for performers I'm hoping to continue to foster in conversation and in practices with you, is really, how do we make sure that we are treating ourselves with kindness, our experience of life from a place of compassion, while also knowing that we can choose to make changes as feels right and aligned for us internally, and then find ways to either magnetize or call for certain kinds of experiences to meet and match our desires, our life visioning, having a roadmap to get somewhere, and the embodiment that I do, which is moving through the internal state to get the clarity around the internal blockages that might be keeping us from actually using our roadmap. Loud car outside. I don't know if you heard that, but little race car. So that's what we did there. That was our visioning step 3. And it was where I'd like to be in. And then we did a practice of in 5 years, where I'd like to be. Then we did visioning step 4, from long-term goals to short-term goals, where we really explored mapping out our short-term goals. And then envisioning step 5, we've done like 6 videos. This is a nice, like, substantial mini series. We did from short-term goals to doable actions. That practice was turning goals into actions. So now we are in this final step. How exciting. It's all about visualizing your goals and creating the map. And there are 2 practices listed. I don't think I'm going to read them, but I'm going to read the intro into them, and then I'm going to tell you what they are, but they're pretty long. I'll still give you some form of typed out practice for you to utilize for those of you who are members of the Self-Care Garden or choose to join the Self-Care Garden. Each day's practice of Daily December is coming with like a printout. And so for those of you who are visual learners and like to have something there, then that's a resource for you. Okay, so we're going to start with a little in-between section that says how to work with goals and action items. Now that we have turned our goals into actions over the last 6 videos, I think I said, life isn't static. The process of setting and pursuing life goals should be dynamic and flexible. You may find as time goes on, you'll adjust and update your methods of working with your goals. There it is. Avoid getting overly fixated on the process. I fall into that cycle. I get very, very looped into process, and sometimes well, I do either. I either am very clear on my goal and I'm like not about the process, or I get very into process and I'm like, oh yeah, we're going somewhere. So bridging the space between the two, I think is a really beautiful thing to do and to utilize. Okay. So what you're aiming at is clarity, direction, purpose, and consistency. So you have clarity, you're able to understand with clear vision. You have direction, idea of where you're headed. You have purpose, why you want to get there. And you have consistency that you continually rhythmically show up to the practice, the tasks, the experience, the process. Time specific goals, it expresses, can often bring disappointment because if a goal isn't reached in the time frame that you've set for yourself, you may let the whole thing fall by the wayside. I've grappled with this many times. It's important to remember that we hunter types are not usually predisposed to accurately assessing how long something will take to complete. In this book, The Drummer and the Great Mountain, what Michael Joseph Ferguson talks about is really clarifying different types of people. There are the farmer types and the hunter types. The hunter types he refers to as more of the ADD, ADHD types, which is really moving with the hunting process and going by the moment and tracking the experience of what it is that you need to get to. So it's very in the moment. It's a lot of neurodivergent skills, our creative capacity are really great for moving in that hunter type of a experience of life versus the farmer type, which he refers to as more like the neurotypical world and sort of the agricultural world, and how having a homestead and having your reliable patterns on the day-to-day where you wake up, you feed the animals, you do the things, you have your set of things that you have to do every day, and it works in a lot of consistency of pattern and dedication to repeating things. And that hunter types tend to struggle because there's a desire to see or seek the next thing. And there's it doesn't make sense somehow in the body mind relationship to have that kind of still steadiness. And I am learning for myself, because what's interesting is that there is a book called The Body Keeps the Score, which is a fantastic book. Some of what is expressed there is that the symptoms of ADD, ADHD are really no different than trauma symptoms. And so regardless of how or why one might be experiencing life in that way, that there is also an awareness that we can cultivate, or I should say, as we cultivate a more felt sense of safety in the internal world as it relates to the external world and vice versa, we may be able to feel more capacity to be more still, more stable, more dedicated in that kind of consistency piece where we do really keep coming back to something and have a sort of like, these are my words, like a devotional practice into it, which is also gathered from some of the other work that I've done in different ways. Like I've been really unpacking a couple of key terms that I really kept at arm's distance for a long time, because there's other aspects of where these terms have been used, I guess how these terms have been used, that hasn't worked for me. But I've been really looking at that particular word, devotion. Like, what are you devoted to? How can you do something in a way that feels like you have a sense of devotion and you're doing it in a way that feels devotional? And it doesn't have to feel so loaded with all of the other stories that I've had about it that also integrate a lot of like spiritual colonialism and God over man, man over nature. And that does not work for me in any capacity of the mind. There's just a lot of also like systemic mind stuff and like things that societally, even as someone who has not been brought up in a religious background, I've just been exposed to so many different cultures and so many different religions. And there's so many beautiful aspects of all of them, including the ones that I'm like, no, I need some of this to not be part of my experience. It's not that there aren't wonderful aspects of every kind of walk or path in life, but it's just very clearly there's very specific ways in which I've learned to internalize what I've now come to understand as like abusive psychological structures. So I'm unpacking that. If you are too, we're good friends. If you're not, invitation to deconstruct. We're going to continue on now. Your visioning and goal setting processes should provide you with ongoing energy and inspiration. If they don't, revisit your methods to see how they can be made more enjoyable. Final step, visualizing your goals, creating the map. A visual representation of your goals can be extremely valuable. So we're taking our goals and we're going to create a visual representation of it, something that you can see. This is the practice for this. I'm going to do it in a different way because this is embodiment, but I'm also in some ways creating this video. So there is a visual component to it. And maybe I may at some point also do these practices in the way they're laid out, but I just love embodiment so much. And I find there's so much value in the bridging the space of the somatic and symbolic realm, and then finding clarity there, and then feeling the experience. And then I feel like I can see it, feel it, sense it, know it, understand it in my life. And then I can move more intuitively, moment by moment by moment, while not letting go of the feeling that I know and the journey or the map that I felt through the embodiment practice. Once I've arrived at whatever either completion process or uncoupling experience or unraveling dynamic or blooming, beautiful, lovely, luscious kind of process that feels like it's a match. So I can find key points of what feels right to me and then allow the embodied experience of that to be my felt sense of safety, to then go find that in my life. So if that's something you're interested in, I would love to have a chat with you if you want to talk more. And you can feel free to fill out a little intake form for a connection call. And you can ask me questions and I can answer them. And if you want to talk about how we might be able to work together, then that's available to you as well. Or we can just sit and chat a little bit. You can learn a little bit more about what I do, and I can ask you about who you are and what your needs are. Okay. So, in the past, if you were to sail to some distant land, knowing which direction to travel in wouldn't be enough to have a successful journey. You would need a map, something to continually reference along the way to ensure that you're headed in the right direction. Do you keep coming back to home? What is your frame of reference? It's far too easy to get lost or forget where you're headed. There are numerous ways to visualize your goals. Here are 2 methods you may want to consider. So I'm not going to read the entire everything of these practices because they go into great detail, but I will say there's the vision board process. So a vision board is a large poster board. Some of you may have made lots of vision boards. And if you have, I'd love to hear what they are. Feel free to let us know in the comments if you do this one or if you have past ones that have been really cool. But a vision board is a large poster board with pictures depicting your various goals. It's a simple concept, but it can be extremely effective in reminding you of your goals on a daily basis. So that's one. And then the second option is to create a vision video. For those a bit more adventurous, a vision video is another method of visualizing your goals. This process was made popular by an Australian named Malcolm Cohen. The basic premise is create a short video, 3 to 5 minutes long, that depicts all of your major life goals using music, photos, and videos to represent each of your goals. Cool. So again, I'm not going to go into the details of the details, but I do know that you can have a lot of freedom, creative liberty in this process, in this practice. So here we go. We're going to do the embodiment. Ta-da. Which one do I want to do? Vision board or vision video? I want to do vision video. I have no idea what's going to happen. Okay. I am now my vision video. I want to say, for those of you who haven't been here before, what the embodiment practice is to really like state an intention, state a clarity of the state that you're going to go into or explore into like an intuitive, somatic, sensory embodiment. I also experience channeling experiences sometimes while this happens, in addition to just communicating with my body. So a lot of it is I listen and I wait, and then my body starts to move. And I sometimes start to get images, sensations, and I sometimes narrate you through it and sometimes just experience it. Sometimes it's pre-verbal, so words aren't necessary. And sometimes it's, I need to be able to name the experience to help me gain clarity around it as like a witness. It feels really good. Like this is part of the vision video, like I need to tell you a little bit about what it is I do and how I do it. So there's some orientation and clarity for you so you don't feel lost and you don't feel like, what is this woman doing? Because what is this woman doing? I'm doing a lot of different things at once, but I'm learning how to and working on the process and practice of finding ways to communicate what it is I do and to share in small enough micro moments or pieces that feel like they are, the pieces create the sum of the parts, but I also then can express from the wholeness of everything that I know. This is like an integration process for me. So the practice, whether I'm holding someone else through the practice or I'm holding it for me, it's about the person experiencing the practice, finding some sort of wholeness of self, finding some sort of clarity of integration, identification, self-actualization, support system, needs-based compassion. Where there's a witness, whether it's my witness of myself and or the witness of the external person or people, the you that is watching, right? Right now, the you is this broad, like the eyes that find me on the internet, which are very specific to you who's watching me right now, but it's also sort of the general gaze of all of those who happen upon this video across time and space. However few or many or varied that might be. This feels like part of the vision video too. Like it's just like knowing that, like it's the relationship between the experiencer and the witness, and like the witness is going to change. How does the experiencer find the wholeness? Even as the witnesser changes, and also clarifying so much capacity for standing in autonomy so that there's space enough to feel like there's safety enough in order to be vulnerable, in order to express freely, in order to be in the fullness, the clarity of self, so that there isn't this comes back a lot. So I'm getting the image of it, so I'm going to repeat it. This happens a lot to a lot of people I work with. There's like you can't speak, you're not allowed to say that, you can't. And it happens in a lot of different contexts, one of which people who are very intuitive or magical or work in this sort of realm that has been highly persecuted throughout the ages and demonized and otherized. And maybe that person does or doesn't have a marginalized identity otherwise, or maybe there's like clarity here. Like I want to stop what I was going to say. And I need to like express some clarity. Here's that left arm, that feminine side from early in the embodiment series, like the full daily December embodiment series, where I was like, I felt like I was serving people with it. Now I'm like, no, I'm taking aim. It feels like a very like goddess Athena, like the huntress in relationship with the woods, the forest, the animals. Is Athena a huntress or protector of the hunt? Goddess of the hunt? I can't remember. I feel like that's really important. Let me look up Athena real fast. Goddess of war, goddess of wisdom. This is just a wikibooks.org first thing that popped up. Athena, goddess of wisdom. Athena was the goddess of battle strategy and wisdom, identified in the Roman mythology as the goddess Minerva. That's the name of my car. My car's name is Minerva. She was always accompanied by her owl and the goddess of victory. I love owls so much. It was one of my favorite first in preschool. I made a art project of an owl, and it's like stuck with me in my heart. So she was always accompanied by her owl and the goddess of victory, Nike. Why is she the goddess of wisdom? From Britannica.com. Athena became the goddess of crafts and skilled peacetime pursuits in general. She was particularly known as the patroness of spinning and weaving. Interesting, because when I was talking about money, I was like spinning a lot, like healing my finances, finding my right relationship with safety and financial flow. That she ultimately became allegorized to personify wisdom and righteousness was a natural development of her patronage of skill. Cool. So from homework.study.com, what are 3 of Athena's powers? Athena's most significant powers are her great wisdom and strategy. Aside from the fact that she is a goddess and therefore immortal, she is also renowned for giving men courage on the battlefield and for her invention of significantly useful things like the ship, the chariot, and the plow. Her weaknesses. Athena's strengths: rational, intelligent, a powerful defender in war, but also a potent peacemaker. Her weaknesses: reason rules her. She is not usually emotional or compassionate, but she does have her favorites, such as the beleaguered heroes, Odysseus and Perseus. Is this enough? Do I need anything else from here? What does Athena love most? Perhaps one of the most recognizable of the Greek goddesses, Athena is the symbol of wisdom, courage, and was the patroness of the great city of Athens. Athena's life passion was to protect and lead the people of Athens. Okay. Thanks for joining me on that little jaunt into a special interest focus. So I don't feel like I'm channeling the energy anymore. I was for a moment, and I could have just gone into channel, but instead I decided to research the archetype that it felt like I was channeling. And so we got a lot of lovely wisdom out of doing that. And now I can kind of come back into my pragmatism, into my reason and logic, Athena, and come back into strategy and be really clear how much self-care for performers is. Like, I'm such a pacifist, and I keep saying that. I keep saying how I am like a reluctantly subversive artist. Comes up a lot in my way I describe myself over years. Like, I'm like, but I don't want to be subversive. I don't want to be at war. But I think the thing is that sometimes you really have to take aim and be really direct and strategic in order to get through safely into a new way of being. Right? So if that's our metaphor for war, I can flow with that, right? That also potentially is like creating a visioning process to get somewhere. That also is like being willing to use the traditional like left side of the body, which is the feminine side, to be able to do something that like Western societal norms or in the way in which things funnel through like colonial patriarchy, right? That's like, you know, and it's not the only way or the place that this is the case, but there's this desire I have to talk about like binaries and be like, do you see yourself in a binary? Do you need me to be in one of the 2 binaries? Because it almost sometimes doesn't matter which one I take. It depends on the experience of the other person. And it's not to be like devil's advocate, but it is to be like, well, where's your truth? Where are you hiding your truth? Because there's something here that feels like I need to hold the clarity for. Again, you don't have to see it right away, but that I need to hold the clarity for it. And I can know that like you might not have a readiness, and I might not choose to, I may or may not choose to really do anything with the clarity of this sort of like power of wisdom and strategy and focus, but I also am very specifically doing something with that. I just am hoping and wanting and longing to bridge a space. And this is what opens up here in my throat all of a sudden. I'm hoping to bridge a space where that can be done peacefully and not through war. Like I feel very sturdy and like if fight needs to fight, I'm going to figure out how to protect myself and treat it maybe a little bit more like Aikido. You know, try to get out of the way and you roll things over and you learn how to roll. And as a martial arts system, right? And it is very like nature based and uses a lot of like Fibonacci spirals and the sort of golden means ratio, sacred geometry in order to move and flow as it does. And also there's the experience of that I learned from Anne Bogart's work in one of her books on viewpoints about how in Aikido you either go around or you choose death. In theater, in Aikido, right? When you're going to enter a fight, like you either go around that fight or you choose to stay through all the way to the end. And I think this is where I'm been waffling. I've been like, can self-care for performers go around? And it's like, I mean, yes, maybe, sure. Yes, maybe, sure. And maybe part of it is also just clarifying, like, let me hold the strategy and be like, if you're going to go around, go around. If you're not going to go around, be prepared. If you decide to be prepared, let's get you prepared. If you're going to go around, let's utilize tools and strategies to do that part too and keep yourself safe in the process. Because one thing in this book that feels mostly complete, that's like that's the thing, that's the visioning of that's my vision video, feels accurate. But one thing that came up later, I was kind of like flipping through into the next section, and this feels really important to say. Okay, I'm just going to kind of spitball through the next bit that I read without reading it all, but to you verbatim, but kind of summarizing parts of it that feels aligned to this. No, I am going to read this very specific section. This section is in a section after, and it's reimagining how you make money. And it talks about how money carries such a tremendous weight in our society. It connects deeply to needs like security, self-esteem, freedom, and respect. It's no wonder it has such a charge to it. Learning how to bring money into your life in many different ways can be a big step in achieving greater stability and personal freedom. There's a reference that in the bibliography and resources section that a lot of these concepts that are listed in this book are from an audio series entitled Prosperity Consciousness by Frederick Lerman. So this next section is called Getting to the Essence of Money. One of the primary reasons why many of us don't follow our dreams has to do with root level fears about our survival, because money and survival in our society go hand in hand. Many of us often settle for a job we don't like because it pays the bills. Feeling secure in the world is extremely important, but it shouldn't be the only factor that rules your decisions. Through consciously recognizing this deep connection between survival and money, you have the opportunity to move towards new ways of thinking. Otherwise, you can remain stuck in patterns that cause you suffering, unable to make important changes in your life because you're not dealing with this fear of survival directly. Fear of survival, deal with it directly. Deal with the fear of survival directly. I also want to say he talks about how money starts with what energy we have and then to what service we are in the process of serving, and an experience of gratitude, and then an evolution or a blooming of money being exchanged. But so many of us were taught that the job equals money, money equals the job. So learning how to renegotiate that. And he also expresses that a major key to creating wealth is that once you've developed a way of providing value to others that you understand is valuable to others and that it feels good for you to provide that, the more you can expand this service to reach large numbers of people, the greater potential there will be for earning money. So therefore, perceiving your work as service is probably the most profitable thing you can do. this may sound a bit lofty, and I've heard people talk about that, like service, but I've had to renegotiate my relationship to that word, what it can mean, what it does mean, how it's been used in a harmful way. I've done a lot of deconstructing around that, sort of like I've been doing with the God word. And I'm like, there's aspects that I don't want in my life. And there's aspects of service that I also have no interest in. But coming back to the book I referenced yesterday, The Art of Receiving and Giving, so much about learning about the wheel of consent and how Betty Martin DC lays out the different quadrants of how we receive and give and how to practice them in integrity. I'm like, oh, I'm starting to understand something more that I didn't feel like I ever had the awareness, the capacity, the clarity, the understanding, whether or not other people understood it and didn't explain it in a way that I could understand and digest, versus I really just needed this particular lens, and maybe this particular lens understands something in a more nuanced way. That really settles my soul, because it feels like there's a depth of process in it that feels really safe for me. And I need that. I need depth of process. That's my personal, it's a need. I need that for safety. So yeah, therefore perceiving your work as service is probably the most profitable thing you can do. This may sound a bit lofty, but in essence, it's quite practical. And it's usually the difference between having work that really inspires you and work that earns you a paycheck. Experientially, these are two entirely different planets. So your experience of doing something inspirationally versus something that just earns you a paycheck is two entirely different, complete planets with different atmospheres. And I keep talking about in these embodiment series too, what has been coming up in my embodiments is like, I feel like it's either the wrong atmosphere, or I need a different atmosphere, or I'm in a new atmosphere, or like I have not been in a compatible atmosphere. And I think part of this is like the deconstructing of that. So hopefully some of you find some value in this too. Because also one of the things that he references in this section about money, the importance of clarifying our needs and identifying our feelings and allowing our relationship in the space between needs and feelings to really help guide us into action steps that are going to fulfill the core needs, as opposed to what we think might get us the thing. And oftentimes, and I think this happens in the performing arts too, this is something I'm recognizing in myself, that I think like I had certain core needs that hadn't been being fulfilled in my life, that I was in some ways receiving through the performing arts: connection, community, feeling seen, witnessed, allowing to practice and fail and get better. Those things have been so valuable to me in the kinds of environments in the performing arts that have felt like a match. And I'm wanting to develop and cultivate practices where I can continue to fulfill those needs, but without the volatility of the performing arts industry or the education system, as a way in which I'm finding that job equals money kind of thing, that I really am in the energy of those basic needs, and then finding how can I fulfill my own needs in that way. And as my personal needs are fulfilled, provide a sense of service where you feel a sense of gratitude. And then money is a natural byproduct because there is a match card there. There's so much vulnerability for me that opens up there. And it's like, I want to close my eyes and be like, I'm afraid. I'm afraid that I'll never find people who value what I do, even as I have people reflecting to me that they value what I do. But I have this idea and experience that it's like, I don't know where the money is going to come from. And do the people I want to work with have the resources? And how is that practice? Because I want to work with across different community spectrums, and those who have experiences of being under-resourced is a kind of experience I feel like deep in my heart. Those who are under-resourced to feel like they still have support. Like, to me, I'm gonna cry. Like, that's the service. And along the way, there's been this, and I've expressed this in other videos, in some ways, this thrashing of like, gosh, I wish I would have gotten that. And I have had so much resentment of, do I really have to provide the thing I didn't get that I would have loved to have had? And it's not that I haven't had any of it, I think, but there's like a core awareness of the depth of clarity that's always available to me, and that there's an atmosphere of community environment that supports that, has been something I've felt as elusive, whether or not there was availability to connect into at least aspects of that, because I have connected to aspects of that. But I really want to make the implicit more explicit, and to be able to really break down the pieces that creates a new kind of atmosphere, and then say, this is where I can breathe. If this is the kind of space you can breathe too, come on in and practice in this atmosphere, and practice learning how to generate your own atmospheric experience in your life through certain kinds of perspectives and practices and research and resources and tools, and how to listen to your own body and let your own body, your own wisdom also guide you, and also how to meet your body, and from a place of compassion, and not trying to hide or shelter your experience away, even as you might choose to keep something private, but that it's not because you're afraid that you won't be received and you won't receive the care that you actually need. It's because you just want that space and privacy. If you do. One more thing. He also mentions that feelings are like the lights on a dashboard, letting us know whether a need is met or unmet. And I've been finding this out for a long time in my own experience, and then also finding people who mirror that. But I feel like I have a sense of like, well, yeah. And so then to read it now, it impacts me differently from this particular teacher, guide, author. I love that he also lists, most of the time our triggered needs are safety, care, awareness, and respect. And I feel that. And so I want to invite us into a little moment, and then I think we'll close. Go ahead and put your hand on your heart if you're still with me, if you're still here. I invite you to close your eyes or create a soft gaze, whatever feels best or right to you. And just feel what it's like if you were in an atmosphere that felt like it provided safety for you. What would that feel like in your body? What would that be like in your interactions? And once you feel like you have a fullness of safety, or you've touched into safety, and you have a clarity around like what it's like to, at minimum, invite a little bit more than you have felt or that you feel now, even if you don't have a felt sense of complete safety, especially those of us who have been through a lot, it takes a while to be able to bridge into these somatic spaces that feel like we belong in our body, because there can be some content that's there that's the opposite of what we're looking to cultivate. And so after safety, let's look into care. What would it be like to receive care? The hardest, most hurt parts of you, what if those parts, those inner pieces, those parts of yourself you're afraid to share with the world, what if a witness received those parts from a place of care, and those parts received the care that they need? And the next one is awareness. So maybe there's a lack of awareness that you feel that others have in relationship to what you're going through, or what you see that others don't see, if there's not an awareness there. What would it feel like if you lived in a climate, an environment, an atmosphere that cultivated awareness, cultural awareness, community awareness, personal awareness, interpersonal awareness? awareness of impact on either side of the coin of what that can mean. Willingness to meet and attune in the awareness. And then the last one, respect. Maybe you feel like you've betrayed yourself or have been betrayed, or that there's been a disregard. What would it be like to not have that happen again? What would it be like to really feel like the parts of you that haven't been respected by yourself or by others really received? The kind of sanctity of respect. What would it be like to breathe that in? This one feels edgy for me. And you may notice that some of them feel more edgy for you than others. Some might feel like you have an easier touch point into them. They might all feel very distant to you, or most or all of them might feel like you have a fullness and an awareness. And each one of us is going to relate differently to it. It's not about finding a right way, but it is about tracking in this moment what I could potentially feel into that could be just a little bit more of those things, or to feel the rightness of having just the right amount of those things without feeling like you need to have more than the enough. Mm-hmm. And just tracking your body, taking a breath, feeling the rise and fall of your heart. Deep breath in through the nose. Exhale, release. Shake it out. Thanks for joining me and being a partner in my journey and being a part of my witness. This is so valuable for my own recovery and restoration, and also to help clarify the visioning components of self-care for performers, because a lot of it, I feel like it needs to be relational and it needs to be felt and sensed and attuned to as I'm being relational with you, whether that's out in community or on these videos, and practicing speaking to the metaphoric void of the internet and the witness that I don't know who you're going to be, figuring that out. And then really also finding like, oh, okay, it's safer than other cycles of how I've shared things maybe have been in the past. And can I breathe into that? And can I also know that when the time comes, if the time comes, as the time comes, I will be able to hold steady and use my strategy, wisdom, etc., to understand how to incite bravery for you into keeping yourself brave in wartime and protected, but also working towards peace. And sometimes that means hard boundaries. Sometimes that means clarifying, standing in a kind of power and agency. And sometimes that means being willing to hold direction, focus, and a map for yourself so that you can be with the clarity of your baseline needs, but also still know where you want to head, what you want to create, what you don't want to create, and the basic roadmap to get there. And then attune to, is that aligned with my core needs? Love you. Happy holidays. I'll see you on your tomorrow, and we'll see how my videos, the making sharing process will go on my end. But my intention right now is to take the full weekend off and rest, and then come back into practice a little bit before that. But we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. What I love about this book is like in the moment, you got to see, have your roadmap. It can change. Okay. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.